Hey everybody, your friendly neighborhood Glenn here. Yes, I'm in a hotel room because I'm on location shooting some very special content, but none of this is a concern to you because we've got a great show today. Stick around.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live. I, of course, am Glenn Hausman. Thank you so much for being here today. So I've got to do something about those opening credits because, that pandemic hair is just getting a little bit out of control over there. I think you could actually go back in a timeline in the pandemic by tracing how long and out of control my hair is right now. But I cut it because I'm headed out to the hospitality show June 27th through 29th, coming to the fabulous Venetian Las Vegas, where I will be doing a lot of great interviews there. Plus, we're doing a Friday night audit live from Flanker, a brand new sports bar concept at Mandalay Bay for my friends over at Carver. I'm so excited today because actually we're going to be speaking to someone in Las Vegas, and her mission as a professor is to bring gender equality to boardrooms, the kitchen, and other areas in hospitality. And it's about time that we're focusing on this particular issue. So let's bring in Dr. Lisa Cain, associate professor at FIU. But even though she's from FIU, she's still in Las Vegas. How are you today?
I'm great, Glenn. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here and to represent the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at FIU from Las Vegas.
Yeah, so why are you in Las Vegas, but FIU? Tell us about this partnership that you worked out.
Right. So actually, FIU is very inclusive, and they are also very progressive and forward thinking. So I actually joined FIU and the Chaplin School 8 years ago. And I was hired as an online professor. So I've always lived in Las Vegas and taught for FIU. And they saw the value in bringing in professors with access to hospitality from other areas and different perspectives. And so it's just been a phenomenal ride. I got to help others during the pandemic because I had experience with online teaching. I wasn't caught flat-footed, and so that was very rewarding because I could help my peers as well as my students and be there to support them because I wasn't playing catch-up myself. So
yeah, well, that's great. And now you're dedicated to doing this gender equality initiative. And I will tell you, we need to move it along a little bit quicker. Although that's not to say that progress hasn't been made. And I remember early on in my career, late 90s, early 2000s, I would go to certain events and it would basically be a lot of men with a couple of women around. I'm starting to see that changing on the general levels within hospitality. Maybe financial ones have 30% women now, but we're not quite there yet. But when you start to look at boardrooms and the executive suites, the problem is a lot greater and more to akin what I think I was experiencing with the general hospitality population 25 years ago.
Yes, that's true. So one great example, not so great example, is if you look at executive chefs in the industry, 7% are female. 7%. We haven't even reached double digits yet, let alone equality, right? Or some sort of parity.
7%.
7% of executive chefs are women. And that's a little confusing in some regards because when you think about who in the home typically is ascribed the role of the cook, it's not the man, it's the grandma, it's the mother.
Right.
And then when you push it out into industry, there's sort of a disconnect as to why you wouldn't see women in the kitchen. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It's the same holds true for higher levels in the organization, right? Because what happens is there are a lot of factors that contribute to this, one of which is the similarity attraction paradigm, right? So we see that people are most comfortable with other people who have similar qualities to them. The more similarities you have with somebody, the more comfortable you are being with them, working with them, promoting them, et cetera. And so if you have all men in the kitchen, you're going to see more men promoting other men.
I've seen that in executive boardrooms outside the kitchen as well. White men in particular, happen to have stronger relationships with other white men, and therefore maybe it's an unconscious bias or something like that, look to those individuals that are in their circle to bring them ahead. So there might be an amazing woman who's in the organization, but hasn't been able to create that sort of relationship, is kind of left on the outside, even if it's unintentional sometimes, I think.
And that's absolutely correct. And you mentioned unconscious bias, and we all have them. And the first step to sort of correcting for them is to figure out which ones are most present within you. And there are Harvard does these implicit bias tests that you can take. These are really helpful in understanding what you hold as an internal bias. And it's not to say that you are a bad person or someone who overtly tries to go out of your way to, hinder women or people of color or underrepresented people from advancing in the industry. It's just that this is what society and your cultures have subtly imposed upon you for your whole life. And so you don't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people get uncomfortable with that term, unconscious bias. But instead of looking at it that way, just look at it as we're all on this journey in life, and you don't know sometimes what you don't know. I say that phrase a lot. I'm talking to the people out there, because when it comes to business and learning, but it's about all of our aspects in life. We need to be more curious and understand what's out there in order to help ourselves and the way we relate to others, and in the spirit of hospitality, to help others as well. But I want to go back to the 7% thing, right? Because it's such a weird thing, because it's like everybody's grandma was a great cook and everybody's mom is a good cook. In my house, I happen to do the cooking because that's my hobby and I'm passionate about it. But generally speaking, women are the ones that are forced into dual roles. One, to have a job, since much more so since I came to consciousness in the 70s to now. But they're also still have to have the majority of the work at home for whatever societal reasons there are for that. So there's a lot of pressure on women. So when it comes to an executive chef job, you're probably forced to make decisions about what you want to do in your life that men don't necessarily have to make. Plus, it might be a little bit of a self-selecting industry where women aren't even thinking they could go into that kind of business. Am I circling around the truth here at all?
I think you are. And it sort of stems from the 1950s, when there was a gender ascribed divide in the country, and women stayed home and were the caretakers and did all the cooking, and then went to work. And then as we started to see more dual earning incomes, we started to see less of a shift in terms of responsibilities. So that is certainly part of it. And then this industry is notorious for long hours, late hours, and you don't get birthdays off, you don't get holidays off, you don't get long sick days or paid vacation or paid time off. And so I think you're right, to some extent. It's a decision that a woman who wants to have a child has to make, in terms, because there's downtime. Even if you decide, I'm going to hire somebody to take care of my child, put them in daycare, preschool, whatever the case may be, you still have to recover from physically going through labor before you can go back to work.
That's right.
And then and then you have to decide, is that the kind of life you want your child to have once you bring it into the world? Do you want it to have, its mother or its father, for that matter, absent? Right. And I think that because of those cultural values that we instilled in the 50s, right, going back to these unconscious biases that we have, where men were supposed to be breadwinners, they made these conscious decisions to miss out, right? And now I think we're seeing this sort of, reckoning in this industry, because men don't want to miss out on their child's upbringing either. And so there needs to be a new way to approach the kitchen. And part of it, I think, is revamping the brigade system, if we're looking at a kitchen specifically, because it's built on a militaristic system, and the military has largely and historically been male dominated and comprised of men, and that might not work for the modern kitchen structure. Maybe we need one general, head chef, but then we need several sous chefs, or, we need to shift up the hierarchy to allow for time off, to allow for someone to raise a family or go to a funeral or celebrate a birthday or take a night or a weekend.
Right. Well, I will say your dog has a lot to say about this issue. It's super passionate, just as I am about this particular issue. So, Lisa, I think there's a lot that you just said there, and I want to break it down a little bit. That component about men wanting to spend more time at home. I wonder if that's led to some sort of psychological awakening that's making more men be conscious of this particular issue, which in the end might help women get that gender equality in the areas of life that we're talking about. I don't want to make this a men says so it can happen thing, but I'm just kind of thinking as awareness is there, it probably opens up more conversations and equality.
I agree with that. And I think the other thing is just having that alternate perspective, right? So there's this interesting phenomenon that happened with seatbelts. And I know that's not hospitality related, but they when they were designing the airbags in cars and safety mechanisms, they did all of these crash tests, and they found that these airbags were super, super safe, but women were dying at substantially higher rates than men, even after all of the tests.
Right.
And finally, they brought a woman onto the team because it was an all-male group.
Right.
They brought a woman onto the team, and she suggested maybe we use something other than a average male sized crash test dummy. Right. And so they changed the size of the test dummy, and then we're able to modify how the airbag went off and what have you. But it takes an external perspective and one that might bring a personal experience to give a clearer lens. And so I think that, having a more diverse, more gender parity in the industry provides opportunities for hospitality organizations specifically to cater to all of their clientele, because we don't just have male clientele, right? We have female clientele, we have families. So the more diverse perspectives you have, the more you can cater to the different genders, cultures, ages that you have coming to your property and patronizing your restaurant or your hotel. So it's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And the more diversity that we could bring to every aspect of our lives, I think will make us stronger as a kitchen, as a company, as a society over there, because all those different voices need to be heard. We don't live in a monochromatic world. There's many, many different colors, right? Millions and millions of colors, and we can enjoy all of them. Now I'm sounding like a Hallmark card or something like that. But that's the truth. So I'm curious, one note that I just wrote to myself while you were talking is, what about that kitchen culture? Because it used to be such a diverse, the significant number of celebrity chefs that misbehaved. Are you seeing a sea change in the kitchen? And do you think that will help make more women interested in being in part of that environment? And I guess start with the starting point. Did that atmosphere and culture hold women back from even wanting to go into the field?
I think we saw that it did. I think that's why the movement started, right? The Me Too movement. And I think that as the culture continues to shift and become less heated, let's say, which is ironic for a kitchen.
Yeah, I like that.
Need heat.
I don't have the sound effect,
but in all honesty, I think that the more inclusive you can make the culture, and the calmer you can make the culture, and the more learning centered you can make the culture, the more attractive it becomes to everybody. And that stems from issues of, not just the work-life balance that we talked about before, where, it's important for people to be able to take the time off that they need to recharge or be present in the things outside of work that then make them better inside of work. But to your point, the culture at work also has to be conducive to productivity and growth and learning and happiness and excitement and engagement and all of the things that people look for in whatever their career path might be. And so, if you want these creative, incredible female chefs to be part of the industry, which I would argue is super important, because again, you can bring so much more into an organization when you have all of these diverse lenses through which you're looking and creating. The easier it will be to have gender parity, but also just a more productive and conducive environment. There are studies that have shown that female leaders are actually more empathetic, and they more subscribe to transformational leadership than transactional. And so if you look at leadership benchmarks and principles and models, you could argue that women would be better leaders in a lot of instances, or at least as good. And so to have this representation is super important for our industry.
Yeah, and I will say anecdotally, in my career path, male versus female bosses, the women leaders were much more empathetic and I felt more on my side to help me succeed, where the male leaders were more like, go do it, sink or swim, you know? So I think that was interesting. And I just got along with the women managers much better, I think, because of that. Have you seen The Bear on Hulu?
I have not. I've been meaning to watch it, but it's hard to find time without the kids too.
Right, I get it. The reason why I ask you, and you'll totally get sucked into it, because that kitchen is a horrible environment to be in, but it's not sexist or racist, which is nice. So they're all in there, men and women, and they're all strong personalities. And while it still shows how difficult it can be in the kitchen, I think it shows that everybody, who wants to be in there, no matter what your background is, can find success in that atmosphere if you have a passion for this particular skill. But I want to move from thinking about the ovens and go into the boardrooms and stuff. Where are we right now with female representation in strong positions in the hospitality industry?
So it's about 30%, which is better than it used to be.
Yeah, I would say not there yet, but not so bad at the same time.
Yeah. So I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I love her. She was that? Incredible justice, Supreme Court justice. And
she comes up. Go check out the Hotel Zena, which has the most amazing portrait of her on the wall, all made out of tampons. It's really,
oh my gosh,
really cool. All right. So sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. So she was asked once when she thought she would be satisfied with the female representation on the court, and she said, when there's 9 women. Right. And somebody balked and said, well, why 9 women? And she said, well, nobody bats an eye if there's 9 men, so why shouldn't we have 9 women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that idea as well, because equality doesn't mean 50-50. It means the best people for that job that have had equal opportunity to prove themselves along the way, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think it's looking at the candidate who best exemplifies the values and the needs of the company, and the wants of the company. And if you can find that in whomever, then that's who should be in that role. And to your point earlier, the problem is overcoming those unconscious biases, because we all have them. I mean, even women have them more strongly against women than men do in a lot of instances. So there's this mentality of, that success is finite, right? So if someone else succeeds, then I have failed. And that's not the case, because there are so many different avenues, especially in our multifaceted and global industry, for people to succeed and achieve. And so if somebody, gets a raise or, moves up in an organization, it's seen as a threat, and it shouldn't be. It should be seen as somebody who's very qualified and deserving, advancing in the organization, which is only going to better the organization and the lives of the people who are part of it, right? So they've done studies on women judging other women's CVs more harshly than men. And so it's really important to find ways to mitigate our biases. And the first step is knowing that they exist, but then there are also measures we can take to combat those, so that we can have greater levels of parity and the right person in the right role.
I've tried to live my life in we're all in this together type of thing, and we could all be successful and all better ourselves, particularly in the hospitality industry. It's such a great business, and there's enough to go around where everybody that puts in the time and effort could be equal superstars if they work. But I think men, though, seem to be, much more camaraderie, like you're saying. Hey, let's go out for a beer, pat each other's on the back, talk about the game. Why does women seem to be much more competitive against each other than men do? And what can women do about it so it doesn't hold them back from obtaining opportunities?
Right. So that's a great question. And I think the first part of that is for us to recognize that this has been a male-dominated industry. So all of those things that take place that are viewed as camaraderie are all things that are also stereotypically male activities, right? Going out and having a drink and talking about the game. If you're not a sports fan, then do you fit into that culture? And if you are a sports fan, are you seen as trying to fit in that culture if you are not a man, right?
Right. Little side note, I have no interest in sports whatsoever, but I learned just enough to be able to sound like I know what I'm talking about, and the other guys have no idea. Just like close friends know I'm full of shit, but nobody. Please continue, Lisa.
Yeah. So that's just it. And then because it's so hard to get into that boys' club as a woman, I think we all need to shift our perspective and again view success as something other than if someone else succeeds, then I have not succeeded.
Yeah.
And viewing this as a cutthroat environment, right? We need to shift to that perspective as well. But it's also one of those things where you need to pay it forward. So being a mentor, finding a mentor, passing it on, making sure that you're bringing other people up with you so that you are not the lonely only, so that you are not the only woman in the boardroom, because the more women in the boardroom, the more women there will be in the boardroom. Diversity begets diversity. The more diverse a culture, the more diverse an organization, the more it will continue to attract and retain diverse, not only employees, but customers. So it's a win-win, especially in our industry that, to what you said earlier, it's not black and white. You don't have one customer only.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Which makes a whole lot of sense. All right. So one of the things that we've been talking about is, how to build camaraderie, and the men are really great at playing golf. Not this man, although miniature golf, look out. I can hit it through that windmill. But the real golf, I can only handle the golf cart. And there were some women I knew early in my career who have gone on to have amazing positions. But they were like, I've got to learn golf in order to be able to get in there and compete on their level. Not sports, but I mean with business. I think that's interesting. The reason why I bring it up is golf seems to be getting really popular again now. And you wrote a book on managing, golf courses and stuff, right?
I did. So my husband is actually a PGA master professional, wow. And he's the director of the professional golf management program at UNLV. That's and cool. So yes, so I am not a very good golfer either. We could probably go ride the cart together and chit chat. Well,
I'm really good at the going around from hole to hole with a beer and saying, "Hey guys," and then leaving.
Yeah, but I think that's also part of it, right? I think it's breaking down that barrier. So golf was traditionally a male-only sport, right? So we have since made it a little bit more gender equal. For the most part, I think there's only like 12 or 13 clubs in the country left that are male only. Right. And the rest are all, you can go play as long as you can pay for it, right? Or if it's a private club, then it's invite only. But I think to your point, it's breaking down that understanding that you can just go and ride in the cart. You don't have to play in order to be social and to engage and to make the deal, right? If doing business on the golf course is part of the culture of your specific organization. But there are so many other club sports these days that are gaining traction as well, like pickleball comes to mind.
Yeah, right? I mean, the Logic Conference is a big event every September at JW Marriott Desert Ridge, and they do a pickleball tournament the morning that the conference begins now. It's great.
Yeah. So I think it's just finding those common threads like we talked about before and saying, okay, so if everybody's into watching movies or golfing, or how can I join this and still be true to myself, right? If I don't like to golf, that's great. Then I can drive along in the cart and have a drink and just, chit chat as we're driving, because most of golf is traversing the course and not actually hitting.
Yeah, no, that is true. That's why it works so well for networking and deal making, because there's a lot of chatter that can take place. My strategy is I take people out to concerts and stuff, and then that's not great for that part, because during the show you don't actually talk to the person. You're yelling at them to keep quiet, so I don't know about that, but it's a lot of fun if you can figure out a way to bond with people outside the office and share common things. That's really great too. And it doesn't just have to be a group of guys or a group of women doing that.
Yeah, and even just a lunch or a tea or something like that, a coffee, all of that works just as well as golf. But again, it's just finding that common thread, and you can do that with the coffee and then go play the golf or go play the pickleball or go to the concert. And
find that some people are a little bit less aggressive in getting in there and doing things. I used to be like that when I was younger. I'd be scared. What advice would you have for young women out there, and I guess men too, to get out there so they could start building their career so that one day that they will help change the percentages in the kitchen and the boardrooms?
Absolutely. So the first thing is, the worst thing that anybody is going to say to you is no, right? Nobody's going to think less of you for trying. And it might just be not right now, right? They might not have the time genuinely, and they might say, you know what, I can't meet with you right now, but we'll do it again in a couple of weeks.
Right.
Be persistent, make that appointment, and have confidence in yourself, because nobody is going to be a bigger cheerleader for you than you. And constantly pursuing the goal that you have will get you to that goal. You know, there's something to be said for putting it out into the universe and saying, this is what I want to do. This is my plan.
Yeah, very true.
Setting goals that are not just long-term and not just short-term, right? So it's important to have like a 5-year goal, but have a 30-year goal. Where do you want to be when you retire? What does that look like for you? And how are you going to get there, and work backwards from that? And then have a daily goal or 3 daily goals. Like, I want to accomplish this many things in one day, and put them down and make sure that you hit those goals. And they could be something as simple as like, you know, I want to send out 3 emails today.
Yeah, totally.
But at least you've accomplished your goals, and that gets you a little bit closer to the bigger goal at the end of the day, the week, the month, the year. Because when you can break it down into these
little tiny, easy to handle bites. And the other thing that I always say is just do one more thing than you wanted to. You think you're done today? Send one more email. Just do one more, in my case, one more social media post, you know, one more thing that gets you closer to getting my new business, that sort of a thing. And in time, all those little extra things wind up accelerating your career by years, at least from what I've seen from the people around me that do that.
Absolutely. And the converse to that is, we all have days where we just can't, right? Like, I'm done, I'm exhausted, I cannot pick up the pen. Give yourself 5 minutes with your computer or your book or whatever it is that's going to get you closer, your journal, whatever it is that you need to do to be somewhat productive in the day. And they've done studies that have shown that if you give yourself 5 minutes, usually you work an hour or 2, and then you've gotten way more done than you planned to or thought you would, because you were so done and so exhausted, right?
Yeah. So, and the other thing, I don't know if it's the same for you, doctor, but I've gotten really in tune with my natural biorhythms and how they change over the times I've gotten older. I'm in a phase in my life now where I can't sleep anymore in the morning. So I'm at my desk by like 6:30. And as soon as I wake up, from like 7 to my show at noon till like I can go to like 1:30, it's like boom, 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 boom. I don't stop on a good day, and I get so much done because I know that that's when I'm able to work best. So I create my schedule around creating opportunities for me to succeed.
I agree with you. It's really important to be in tune with yourself. There's a lot of self-reflection that goes into career advancement, and knowing who you are, what is important to you, finding an organization that fits with that, because just as much as they need you or you need them, they need you, especially today. And so finding an organization, if you work best at night, then this is a perfect industry for you, right? The kitchen is great for you.
Yeah, doctor. And I was like the same thing. 15 years ago, I was working in Brooklyn and sharing an office with my wife, who was tutoring in the afternoon. So I'd come in a little bit in the morning, then she'd tutor in the afternoons. I'd go take care of the kids. Then when she got home, we'd have dinner. And then at like 7, 8 o'clock, I'd go back to the office and work until 12, 1 o'clock, because that's when I was most awake, and that's when I could focus most on work. And I knew that about myself, and I didn't try to get up at 6 in the morning at that age. You know, well, the kids, they got me up, but I couldn't work then.
Absolutely. And knowing yourself also is a really great way to identify if this industry is right for you, and how this industry and what area of this industry, right? Because if you decide you want to have a family and being in, on the front line isn't working anymore, maybe it's one of those things where you step back and you take a remote position, or you join HR, or you do things that facilitate what's important to you in the moment. Because in my 20s, it was important for me to go out and be out late and be with all my people. And I worked in the restaurant industry, and it was great. And now it's really important for me to stay home and be with my kids and also be productive and still stimulate myself mentally and be engaged in our industry, but in a different way.
Exactly. I felt exactly the same with you in those different periods of my life. Now in my 50s, I don't want to speak to anyone ever under any circumstances, but I'm comfortable with that. So it's okay. So when you're thinking about remote work and you're in your 20s and you're starting to build your career, and I know this is a little bit off track on what the topic is today, but how do you stay competitive if you're not there in the office being seen all the time? And I see this with IT people. Nobody has a real understanding of what they do, so they're not necessarily as appreciated as they could be because everything's mysterious and doesn't easily show the work that they have. So how do you handle that?
Well, I think part of that is personal and part of that is company culture. So there's this legal term, it's res ipsa loquitur. It means the thing speaks for itself, right? And if you're super productive and you're meeting all of your benchmarks and you're meeting all of the quotas, the thing speaks for itself, right? If the remote work is working and you're being as productive or more productive than is expected of you, that's great. If you're concerned personally that your organization isn't identifying your milestones and your successes, or you know that they aren't because they've told you so, there's nothing wrong with self-marketing and self-promoting, because again, as I said, nobody's going to market you or be a bigger proponent for you than you. So tell them what you've done, give yourself a pat on the back and send it to your GM or whoever's in charge, your director, and let them know that this is what I've accomplished this week. This is what we set out to do, and here's how I exceeded it or met it, and go from there. And it can't ever hurt to tell people what you're doing, especially today where we're in an age of social media and everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing. I'm here at the Camelback Lodge in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, so I'm going to go grab my kids, I think, and go on a zip line this afternoon. So that should be a whole lot of fun. Dr. Cain, thank you so much for being here. How do we learn more about the program so people could get involved?
Right. So if you're interested in attending school at FIU, we have an executive master's program. We also have an undergraduate program. We have face-to-face, online, hybrid style classes, something for everybody, something that caters to everybody working in this industry. Just go to fiu.edu and search chaplain school and you'll find us there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. And please hang out backstage while I wrap up, and then I'll say goodbye to you later. Thanks. Appreciate you. And thank you guys all so much for being here. What a good, interesting show that was today. I want to tell you also, hey, if you are watching us, why not download the audio version of the podcast? You find us at SoundCloud, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get those shows. Gosh, you know it already. We are there. And if you are listening to us, why not watch us? Find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. No, not Instagram. Sorry. Although I got short stuff on there. LinkedIn. And of course, novacancynews.com. That's novacancynews.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. Text the word hotel to 66866. Meanwhile, I'm Glenn. See you all next time. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on.